In 2022, I had a sabbatical of a couple of months, 3 months, from my work here at St. John's. And I had marked that on the calendar about 5 years before. Really because I knew that my daughter would be graduating from high school that summer. And I would be reaching the point where I was 7, 8 years away from my earliest possible date of retirement. So if I were going to go anywhere else, be called to any other ministry in the church, I was thinking, right around 2022, 2023, well, that would be the time I'd have to make a move. So I went into this sabbatical with 2 questions. The first one was one I investigated very closely and in considerable depth over those 3 months, and that was the question: could I happily spend the rest of my working life and presumably even the rest of my natural life in Sonoma County, California, in Petaluma? And the way I chose to investigate that question was to go exploring, to go to a whole lot of places around Sonoma County that I had not yet been to in the, at that point, 12 years that I'd been living here. And I kind of told some stories about that last fall after I returned. But probably the single kind of paradigmatic moment for me in all of that exploration was when my daughter Risa and I made the 7-mile trip from the trailhead at the Jenner Headlands, just north of Jenner, up to the top of Pole Mountain, which is the highest point along the Sonoma coast. And it just happened to be a beautifully clear day. One of those days when you can see the Farallon Islands beyond the Farallon Islands. And beyond, besides that, the whole of Sonoma County just laid out below our feet. So I came back from that sabbatical feeling like, yeah, I could happily spend the rest of my life right here. But there was this other question that I never really got around to that summer. That was still there, kind of needling me in the back of my mind, even though I sort of put it aside, which was, am I called to some other ministry in the church? Am I called to go someplace else? So as I said, I just kind of put that question to one side and started imagining the next 7 to 10 years of full and rich and rewarding ministry here at St. John's Petaluma. And I started talking with people about the Afghan Allies Project and how that might morph into some longer-term commitment involving other faith communities in our town and other nonprofit agencies in some sort of more modest but ongoing program of refugee resettlement here. And I went to training with my friends from Cool Petaluma that was held here in Cram Hall, training people to be cool block leaders, to go around and visit with all the neighbors on their block, to talk to them about how we might support each other in preparing for the various eventualities that we know are coming, to prepare to deal with extended power outages or other consequences of a natural disaster like a flood or an earthquake or a fire, and how we might build a stronger neighborhood community so that we know who down our street might need particular help in such an eventuality, and who has what skills and resources on our block who can pitch in time of need, and how we can also make changes to our household economies and our built infrastructure in our homes so that we begin to diminish our impact on the broader environment. So I took this training so that I could get started on going door to door in my neighborhood and knocking on the doors and seeing who wanted to get together and talk about these things. Well, so, you know, we have our ideas, our visions, you might even say, of the future. But our vision is one thing, and our call from God is another. How God sees us, how we are seen. What is God's vision for us? That's another thing entirely. So for me, this other question, this one that I'd put aside and hoped to just kind of allow to wither away from benign neglect, came back to me this past summer in the person of my wife. And that's how God's calling usually shows up for us. Not a voice from heaven, but someone or someones in our lives whom we love and to whom we are committed, who gives us some news that we didn't necessarily want to hear, but that demands a response. It demands a whole response. Not just words, but deeds. Changing who we are, even, in response to that call. So my wife, whose mother and stepfather live just outside of Ashland, Oregon, has been reminding me for the last couple of years that the Episcopal Church up there has a vacancy in their rector position. Oh, Trinity Ashland has published their parish profile. I heard that Trinity Ashland might be taking names soon. And then this summer, Meg's mom had a fall and broke several of her ribs. God's call comes to us in the form of other people, often people who need our attention. And so when I got back from my vacation this summer, I sort of grudgingly but dutifully updated my ministry profile with the Episcopal Church and sent in my resume and a cover letter to the search committee at Trinity Ashland. And then they let me know that I was one of their finalists, and could I please come up sometime in October to meet the search committee and the vestry and let them, kick the tires on me a little bit, which I agreed to do. And at each step of the way, I'd say to Meg, and she'd say to me, we don't have to do this. You can always back out. We got up there and we met the good people of Trinity Ashland who, let me say, they're no better than you, which is to say, pretty good people. And then they let me know that they wanted me to be their rector. God's call. Not always the news we wanted. Not always what aligns with our vision for ourselves. Sometimes we have to respond. Sometimes we have to say, "Here I am, Lord." So I do have to say that whatever about my ministry here in Petaluma was really worth doing, has been worth doing. Whatever will have some enduring benefit to this community, was also in response to a call. My friend Britt Olson, who I met in 1995 when I first started going to the Episcopal Church, and I was going to a little church in Berkeley called Good Shepherd Episcopal, and she was in seminary at that time and was doing her field education. And I was curious about the Episcopal Church and ministry in the Episcopal Church, and so she and I went to lunch one day and kind of became friends. Well, she went on to be ordained and then ended up being the canon to the ordinary in the Diocese of El Camino Real. She got me my first job in the church when I desperately needed, when I got out of seminary and had a one-year-old daughter and a wife who really wanted to stay home and take care of her. She got me a job down at All Saints Carmel. So off we went to Carmel. And then after about 5 years in Carmel, when it was time for me to leave there, the canon to the ordinary in the Diocese of El Camino Real posted, I think it was on a Sunday, that, my ministry profile and said, here's a guy who's available. Well, about 4 hours later, I got a call from Britt Olson, who is now the canon to the ordinary in the Diocese of Northern California. And she said, there's this church up in Petaluma. It's kind of a special case, but I think you're right for the job. That's how I ended up here. With the belief, and this is getting back to what I said before, the belief that I was called here, but more than that, that this congregation is called. And I think we've discovered that that's true. We would not have been able to accomplish everything that we have over the last 13 years. We wouldn't even still be here, frankly, if God wasn't calling us to ministry here. Some special kind of ministry that only we can do. That only the Episcopal Church in this building can do here in Petaluma. And all the, different things that we've done and tried, and, the shepherd's play that Larry Temple organized, that we heard about standing out by the columbarium again last Sunday, or, the Petaluma Children's Chorus, or the Afghan Allies Project, or any number of other, crazy things that we've done here over the years. We've done because we're called. And we don't know exactly what that looks like. But we know we have to respond. We know we have to be faithful and respond, not just with words, not just by going through the motions, but by really showing up for God. And again, how we show up for God looks like how we show up for each other. And not just for the people in this room, the people watching online, the people who would be here if they could, but decide to sleep in today. But for everybody here in Petaluma, we're called by God to be present to them, to respond to their needs, to show up for them with our whole selves. So I'm leaving you in charge of this call in a few weeks. I'm not taking it with me. I'm called to somewhere else, it turns out. To Ashland, Oregon, where people there are also called to some ministry. And they're looking for it. And they're hoping I can help them see it and move toward it. And I sure as heck hope I can too. But I don't know. I won't know until I get there, and even then, I won't know any more really than I do about the ministry of this congregation, which, last summer I thought maybe I could bring to some place where it would be not finished exactly, but really set. And I could walk away feeling like I'd finished what I came here to do. I did my work, and I can, point to it and say, there it is. St. John's Petaluma, isn't it magnificent what I did there? Well, no. It is magnificent, but not because of me, because of Jesus Christ, because of his calling, because he sees each of us the way he saw Nathanael under the fig tree, sees us before we even knew that he called to us. He has the vision for our lives. He has the vision for our ministry. And he invites us to respond, to follow, to say to our neighbors, hey, come check this out. I don't really know. I mean, it's just St. John's Petaluma. Can anything good come out of there? Well, let's find out. Jesus says, you will see greater things than these. You will see greater things than these. You will see the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. You will see heaven opened. You will see God in the flesh, in the person who calls you, who says, I need you. And you will respond. And you will see Christ.